Have you played Mafia The Old Country? Didn't think so. I have though, and I'm going to use my powers of good to inform you about what kind of game it is. I went to the studio, played the game, talked to the developers, and now I'm going to impart that knowledge on you. So kick back, relax, let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with the basics. We know that Mafia The Old Country is the latest installment in the acclaimed crime series, and we know that it's a prequel, which will be taking players back to 1900s Sicily. But what sort of game is it?
Mafia The Old Country is a narrative adventure primarily at its heart. Of course, it's an action adventure. You know, it features a wide range of gameplay mechanics, cover shooting at its core, stealth gameplay, riding horses, driving cars, and also knife dueling, which is a feature which we've introduced in this iteration.
Every gameplay element feels really purposeful, and it's all in service of propelling you through the narrative, which is clearly the main motivator. You're not just endlessly grinding out side quests to min-max a numerical stat for Enzo. Instead, you feel more like his co-conspirator to his rise within the Charleyy crime family. This is the fourth game in the Mafia series, but it takes place before the other three, so it's kind of a bit of a Star Wars situation, and newcomers might not be sure where the best place to start their new life of crime is. So, will you enjoy The Old Country if you've never played a Mafia game before?
It's both a great opportunity for new players to jump into the franchise, but also if you have played previous games in the Mafia series, there's definitely some wins there. You know, there's some Easter eggs. You know, certainly it's very similar in, you know, pacing and style and content to previous Mafia games, but equally, obviously the new environment gives it a complete new, like, you know, lick of paint and a whole new like vibe and feeling. So I think, yeah, hopefully our intent, and I think hopefully we achieve this, is it's something that, yeah, people who've never played a Mafia game before will immediately feel at home with and will love it. And people that do know the Mafia franchise are all equally going to feel right at home and, you know, feel like it's a worthy successor to what's come before.
The Mafia games have given us loads of great characters over the years, and particularly some great protagonists, from the true OG Tommy Angelo to his business rival Vito Scaletta to the vengeful veteran known as Lincoln Clay. I mean, each Mafia game has given us a brilliant character to play as. So, who is Enzo, the wise guy that we're going to be controlling this time around?
Enzo, his backstory it really defines him in many ways. He comes from the lowest caste of Sicilian society. He begins the story as a Sicilian, it's called the Caruso. It's actually a nickname, a derogatory nickname that's given to him actually through the story. And the Carusi were mine boys. He had a very grim upbringing, you know, abandoned as a very young child, working in these very dangerous, hazardous conditions. Something intervenes there, and he, you know, falls in with the Mafia family soon afterwards. But he still has this kind of like a need to prove himself and to gain some status. You know, he's had a hard start in life. We can relate to that. I think everybody can relate to that as a reason to kind of like maybe think about entering into the world of organised crime, certainly in a, you know, from a story sense.
Enzo's character is instantly likeable, and you feel torn seeing him delve deep into the inarguably horrible world of crime. The thing is, knowing the harsh life that he's had to live, it actually becomes your mission as the player to just guide him through this story with the intention that he never has to go back to the life of a Caruso, or worse. It's not going to be an easy ride. Tommy guns are as synonymous with mobsters as fedoras, forget about it, and fish-based death threats. But since The Old Country is taking us back to an earlier era in the Mafia history and off to a whole different continent, it seems like we might be working with quite a different arsenal this time around. So what are the tools of Enzo's trade?
So he's a gunman. He's able to access a wide variety of period weapons for that. All of the, you know, the guns and the things he has available to him. We're pre-World War I. We're pre-Tommy gun, you know, the kind of the iconic weaponry of the American Mafia. So that's informed the gameplay of this game quite a lot. You know, we are the shooting gameplay is more tactical, more dangerous feeling than it has been perhaps in more recent Mafia games. But that's a decision we made to A, adapt to the kind of availability of weapons, and also B, to kind of like give the whole feeling of combat that more grounded tone.
The knife is a key thing for him. So obviously when he first comes out from the mine, he's never really experienced a gun before, but he is very familiar with sharp objects and hitting stuff with them.
First of all, the knife is a weapon that's closely associated with Sicilian gangsters. So on the sort of concept and story side, we wanted to include it for that reason. Second reason was because of our sort of shift in combat towards this slightly more tactical, kind of grounded vibe. There's a dozen or so different knives in the game which you can acquire and sort of add extra skills and bonuses to your character in addition to the abilities of the knives themselves. Some you can throw, Some allow you to do particularly cool, like combat takedowns. Some are particularly durable. They've got more ammo in them, like you sharpen them and then you've got a certain number of uses per sharpening. So you can pick more locks, or you can take down more people in stealth using your knife. It was an opportunity for us to introduce a kind of a boss fight mode, something where where Enzo can get up close and personal with his enemies. It's something which in previous games we've been unable to do. We've been limited to shooting them at distance or killing them in a cutscene or something like that. It was great. It was a great opportunity for us to actually have a mode where you get up close and personal with that hated villain and get to sort of like, the two characters can trade barbs and we can have kind of a story kind of finale for many of our, significant story characters in the game. Plus it just looks, it's just a cool and kind of novel experience. You know what I mean? It's just fun to sort of get into these sort of frenetic knife fights.
It really was a seriously humbling experience using the ranged weaponry in this game. They really feel like they're of their time. They're imprecise, they're primitive, not as reliable as Enzo's trusty knife, and while that might sound a bit off-putting to some, I think it further immersed me into those moments of chaos. Combat just feels more grounded, more realistic, and the stakes are so much higher. In contrast, the knife fights are a fascinating bit of theatre. There's this moment where you first try them out, where you might flail about a bit, just slashing and thrusting, without any sort of purpose, and it really mimics what I reckon a novice to this would be like. You panic, you take a hit yourself, and then you center yourself and reassess your approach. After a few fights, I kind of reframe them more as like this deadly dance. The timing, the analyzing of your opponents, it all feels really intimate, which is kind of further compounded by the camera angles that they're shown in. They really punch in, they're more dramatic, they're more gruesome than anything else the game has to offer. You just can't help but wince a little bit every time you just stab some poor sucker. Driving has always been a big part of the Mafia games. I mean, you never feel more gangster than when you're just riding around in a beautiful retro car, thinking about who you're going to whack next. But Enzo also looks pretty at home on horseback, so what are we going to be driving in the old country?
Of course, you can drive cars. That's a big feature of previous Mafia games. It's scaled back from those previous titles, of course, because of the time period. But cars in Mafia have been kind of like embedded together since the beginning of the franchise. It's a really key feature for us. But the cars in this game are kind of turn of the century vehicles. To really lean into the time period. We thought it was fun for this time around to really recreate those kind of earliest generation of car, era of cars. There are fast cars, there are some sports cars, of course, for gameplay sequences. But the experience of driving through the countryside, on roads that aren't necessarily prepared for cars, cranking the engine of the car to start it and things like that. They're just fun kind of role-playing kind of things that we've included there to kind of, as far as possible, make the experience as immersive and unique as possible. Differentiate a little bit from the previous Mafia games and really ground the game in the time and place that we've chosen for this one.
And if we're going to be driving cars, then the next question is pretty obvious. Will we get to race them?
Mafia is known for, we have a very notorious race actually from the previous game. So, but yes, there are races in this game. Yeah, there's horse races and you get to drive cars fast and stuff as well. So yeah, that's a feature.
I can easily liken my fascination for these relics to LA Noire, where driving each car just feels like a trip through time. The cars are beautiful, but primitive. Safe to say, Enzo is a pretty busy guy. He's just sneaking around with knives, he's getting into gunfights and high-speed car chases, or as high speed as you could get back in the 1900s. Anyway, and he's wandering around Sicily, meeting all sorts of interesting folks. Like the other Mafia games, the Old Country blends a lot of different gameplay styles together. So what's the balance like between shooting, stealth, and exploration?
Like the previous games, it's kind of a roller coaster kind of design. You go from a car chase to a shootout to a stealth section to a riding section to a knife duel, and so that keeps it fresh over the course of the story.
There's also player choice as well, I suppose.
There is, yeah.
You can choose to stealth, use your knife, use your guns. You can choose later in the game. You can choose a horse or a car. So to a certain extent, some of these aspects you do get to choose as you go as well.
Yeah, if I was going to guesstimate, it would be something like 50% shooting. That's our main experience. 30% sort of stealth and kind of narrative adventure bits, and sort of 20% or maybe or so of the knife dueling and those kind of encounters. Yeah.
The other main character in Mafia The Old Country is Right there in the title. It's Sicily itself. The team have clearly put a ton of effort into crafting a version of early 20th century Italy that's as authentic as an old family recipe for marinara sauce. So, how much time are we going to get to spend wandering freely around the Sicilian countryside?
When we describe this as a linear narrative game, what we mean is we're pulling you through the story. There is very much a golden path through the game, and we very much, want you to stay on track and experience the story as intended. However, the world is there around you. You can, at a certain point in the game, you can then leave the beaten path a little bit and explore a little bit. There's, we don't have side quests or endless, errands to do. This game is all about the story and experiencing it, from start to end. But yeah, if players want to go off the beaten path, explore, there are things going on around them. There's people in the fields, there's people going to church, there's wildlife, and there's all that kind of stuff. But yeah, really, that's what we say linear. We just really mean we're focusing you, we're funneling you down this place. But yeah, it's a world that's around you to go off and explore if you want. 'Cause you're right, it is beautiful, and it'd be a real shame if you couldn't do that.
For all their flaws, and I'm told they have quite a few, Mobsters, they got style, and we know a lot of players love putting their own personal stamp on their playable ne'er-do-wells. Unfortunately, it sounds like Mafia The Old Country is going to let you do exactly that if you want to.
You can customize his outfits, you can customize his weapon, you can acquire weapons over the course of the game, firearms, different knives. You can choose the vehicle you drive, you can choose the horse you drive, and again, you can acquire those over the course of the game using loot currency. So yeah, you can make him look how you like, you can arm him how you like, so yeah.
And we see a lot of people that get quite into Enzo's haircut. And it does change during the game, but yes, you can set that as well.
Well, we've got two modes actually. We've got a story mode. So like we've got like a kind of a authored progression. The story's set over 3 or 4 years of time. So we've got an authored progression of looks for Enzo where you can kind of customize him within those very story kind of guided ways. But then you can switch that off and then dress him up in whatever, right? Got some funny outfits in there and stuff like that too.
So in terms of gameplay effects, the outfits don't have an effect, but the game isn't lacking a form of progression. Throughout, you can have the opportunity to upgrade Enzo with different charms that he slots into his rosary bead that he carries around with him. And some of these charms will enhance his reload rate, some might apply a buff to his sneak speed after using a whetstone to sharpen his knife. It sounds like there's going to be a fair few of them to find throughout the game, which sounds like a pretty fun way to build the Enzo of your dreams. The Mafia games are all extremely cinematic, drawing the player into immersive stories that are inspired by classic mob movies and filled with dramatic twists, shocking turns, and exhilarating set pieces. And for some players, things like health bars and ammo counters can kind of get in the way of that cinematic vibe a little bit, so do we have the option to turn it off?
Yes, the HUD's fully customizable, so I think every element of the HUD can be switched on or off, or a couple of other different kind of options that you can apply to them as well. So we've done as much as we can there, I think, to kind of give players a choice over what they have on the screen or not.
Of course, Mafia stories aren't one-man shows. After all, like Dom Toretto, they're all about family. Obviously, The Old Country is going to have plenty of new characters for players to get acquainted with, but should they expect to see anyone from the previous games making an appearance?
I'm not going to spoil who they are, because I think that'd be something nice for players to discover. But yeah, there's a number of returning characters.
I love photo modes, and things like photo modes are a great way for players to soak up some of the beautiful scenery that games introduce them to. Plus, it could just be a nice break from all the crimes and stuff. But while The Old Country does have tons of extremely photogenic scenery, it's actually gone for something a little different than a straightforward photo mode.
Yes, there's a photo taking activity in the game where Enzo can go around and take snaps of beautiful vistas through the game mod.
But it's not a traditional photo mode where you can pause the game, move the camera around, change stuff. So we encourage in the set pieces to take photos, but it's not traditional like screenshot mode effectively.
Yeah, that's right.
Mafia The Old Country is not only playable on your Xbox console, but it's going to be part of Stream Your Own Game from day one on August 8th. And that means you can play it on your Xbox console, or you could even stream it onto your TV, laptop, or any device with an internet connection. So what part of Mafia The Old Country are you most looking forward to? Is it the knife duels, the old-timey cars, the gangster epic at the heart of it all, or something else entirely? Why don't you let me know down in the comments? I'll see you next time. Bye!